We continue with Holy Bible reading to request divine union, part 71, 2 Kingdoms of the Old Testament, chapter 14. Absalom comes back to Jerusalem. Joab, the son of Zeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was inclined towards Absalom. So Joab sent to Tekoa and took from there a wise woman. He said to her, "Now mourn and put on apparel for mourning. Do not anoint yourself with olive oil, and be like a woman who is mourning for the dead a long time. Then go to the king and repeat the words I give you." So Joab put the words in her mouth. And as the woman of Tekoa spoke to the king, she put her face to the ground and prostrated herself and said, "Help me, O king, help me." Then the king said to her, "What troubles you?" And she answered, "Indeed, I am a widow. My husband is dead. Now your handmaid had 2 sons, and the 2 fought with each other in the field, and there was no one to part them. But the one struck his brother and killed him. And now the whole family has risen up against your handmaid and said, 'Deliver him who struck his brother, so we may execute him for the life of his brother whom he killed. We will destroy your heir as well, so they will extinguish my ember that is left, and leave neither name nor remnant on the earth to my husband.' And the king said, 'Go in peace to your house, and I will give orders concerning you.' And the woman of Tekoa said to the king, 'My lord king, let the iniquity be on me and on my father's house. Let the king and his throne be guiltless.' So the king who said this to you? Bring him to me, and he will no longer have influence over you." Then she said, "Indeed, remember, O king, let the Lord God prevail, lest the blood of my kinsmen be utterly destroyed. Let no one of them by any means take away my son." And he said, "As the Lord lives, not one hair of your son shall fall to the ground." Therefore the woman said, "May your handmaid speak another word to my lord the king." And he said, "Speak." So the woman responded, "Why do you sometimes consider such a thing against the people of God? Truly this message comes from the mouth of the king as an error, for the king does not bring back his son from being banished. For as we will surely die and be spilled to the ground like water that cannot be gathered together on its own, so too God shall take away life, even as he is taking into account the ones being banished from him. Now I come to speak this message to my lord the king, so the people may see me and say to your handmaid, 'Indeed spoke to the king,' if somehow the king will fulfill the request of his handmaid, for the king will hear and deliver his handmaid from the hand of the man who seeks to cast me and my son from the inheritance of God." And the woman said, "May the word of my lord the king be as an offering, for as an angel of the Lord, thus says my lord the king, and king, hear the good and evil, and the Lord your God will be with you." Then the king answered and said to the woman, "Hide nothing from me that I ask of you." And the woman said, "Let my lord the king speak." So the king said, "Is not the hand of Joab in all this with you?" And the woman said to the king, "O my lord the king, as your soul lives, there is no turning to the right nor to the left from any of the words my lord the king speaks. Your servant Joab commanded me, putting all these words in my mouth of your handmaiden. Your servant Joab did this to bring about this change of affairs, but my lord is wise according to the wisdom of the angel of God, and knows everything on the earth." And the king said to Joab, "All right, I have done this request of yours for you. Go and bring back the young man Absalom." Then Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and blessed the king. And Joab said, "Today your servant knows that I have found favor in your sight, my lord king, because the king has fulfilled the servant's request." So Joab arose and went to Jeshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, "Let him return to his own house, but do not let him see my face." So Absalom returned to his own house, but did not see the king's face. Absalom reconciles with his father. Now in all Israel there was no one praised as much as Absalom, from the sole of his foot to the crown of his head there was no blemish on him. And when he cut his hair of his head at the beginning of every year, he cut it because it was heavy on him. He weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels according to the king's standard. To Absalom were born 3 sons and 1 daughter whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of beautiful appearance, and she became the wife of Rehoboam, son of Solomon, and she bore to him Abijah. Absalom dwelt for 2 full years in Jerusalem, but did not see the king's face. Therefore Absalom requested that Joab send him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. So Absalom said to his servants, "See, a portion of Joab's field is near mine, and he has barley there. Go and set it on fire." So Absalom's servants set it on fire. Then Joab's servants went to him with their clothes torn and said, "Absalom's servants set your portion on fire." Then Joab arose and came to Absalom's house and said to him, "Why did your servant set my portion on fire?" And Absalom answered Joab, "Look, I sent to you, saying, 'Come here, so I may send you to the king to say, why have I come from Geshur? It would be better for me to be there still. Now therefore I have not seen the king's face. But if there is iniquity in me, let him execute me.' So Joab went to the king and told him. So he called for Absalom, and he came to the king and bowed down and fell on his face to the ground before the king. And then the king kissed Absalom. Chapter 15. The treason of Absalom. After this, Absalom provided himself with chariots and houses and horses and 50 men to run before him. Now Absalom would rise early and stand beside the entrance to the gate. So it was that whenever anyone who had a lawsuit came to the king for a decision, Absalom would call to him and say, "What city are you from?" "And such is such a tribe of Israel." Then Absalom would say to him, "Look, your case is good and right, but there is no one to grant you a hearing before the king." And Absalom said, "Who will appoint me as judge in the land? So everyone who has any dispute or cause will come to me. I will give him justice." And so it was, when anyone came near to him to bow down in respect, he would put out his hand and take him and kiss him. Absalom acted in this manner towards all Israelites who came to the king for judgment. Absalom won over the hearts of men of Israel. 4 years later, Absalom said to his father, "I am going to Hebron to fulfill a vow I made to the Lord. For your servant took a vow while I dwelt in Geshur in Syria, saying, 'If the Lord brings me back to Jerusalem, then I will serve the Lord.' And the king said to him, 'Go in peace.' So he arose and went to Hebron. Then Absalom sent spies throughout all the tribes of Israel, saying, 'As soon as you hear the sound of the trumpet, then you shall say, Absalom reigns as king in Hebron.' And Absalom invited 200 men who went with him from Jerusalem. They went along innocently and knew nothing in particular. Then Absalom sent for and called Ahithophel, the Gilonite, David's counselor from the city from Gilo, where he was offering sacrifices. And the conspiracy grew strong, for there were many people who went with Absalom. David flees Jerusalem. Now a messenger came to David, saying, 'The hearts of men of Israel are following Absalom.' So David said to all his servants who were with him at Jerusalem, 'Arise and let us flee. There is no refuge for us before Absalom. Make haste to depart, so he does not drive us out and bring disaster upon us and strike the city with the edge of the sword.' And the king's servants said to the king, 'Why are your servants ready to do whatever our lord the king commands?' 'We are your servants, ready to do whatever the king commands.' Then the king went out on foot with all his household, but the king left 10 women of his concubines to guard the house. And the king went out with all his people on foot and lodged in a distant house. Then all his servants passed before him, even the Cherethites and all the Pelethites, and they stayed among the olive trees in the desert. All the people walked near him with his court, all the strong men and all the 600 men of the army present by his side, and all the Cherethites and all the Pelethites and all the Gathites totaled 600 men. who followed him from Gath on foot, who went ahead of the king. Then the king said to Ittai the Gathite, "Why do you also travel with us? Return and remain with the king, for you are a foreigner and an exile from your own place. In fact, you came only yesterday. Should I move you with us and cause you to flee from your place? You left yesterday. Shall I make your sojourn with us today as well? For indeed I will go wherever I wish to go. So return and take your brethren back with you. May the Lord treat you with mercy and truth." And Ittai answered the king and said, "As the Lord lives, and as my lord the king lives, wherever my lord the king goes, to death or to life, your servant will be there as well." So the king said to him, "Ittai, go and cross over with me." Then Ittai the Gathite and all his men, and all the crowd who were with him, crossed over. And all the country wept with a loud voice, and all the people crossed over the brook of Kidron. The king himself crossed over the brook Kidron, and all the people crossed over inward the way of the desert. And there was Zadok and all the Levites with him, bearing the ark of the covenant of the Lord from Bethor. And they set down the ark of God, and Abithar went up until all the people finished crossing over from the city. And then the king said to Zadok, "Carry the ark of God back into the city. If I find favor in the eyes of the Lord, he will bring me back and show me both it and its majesty. But if he says thus, 'I have no delight in you, behold, here I am,' let him do to me as seems good to him." The king also said to Zadok the priest, "Look, return to the city in peace along with your 2 sons, Ahimaaz and your son, and Jonathan the son of Abiathar. Take notice, I will continue to wait in Araboth in the plains of the desert until word comes from you to let me know." Therefore Zadok and Abiathar carried the ark back to Jerusalem, and they remained there. So David went up by the ascent of the Mount of Olives, and wept as he went up. His head was covered, and he went up barefoot. And all the people with him, each of the men covered his head, and went up weeping as they went. Then someone told David, saying, "Ahithophel is among the conspirators with Absalom." And David said, "Lord my God, defeat the counsel of Ahithophel." Now it happened when David came to the top of the mountain, where he worshipped God, Hushai and the Archite, David's companion, was coming to meet him with his robe torn and dust on his head. David said to him, "If you go on with me, then you will become a burden to me. But if you return to the city and say to Absalom, 'Your brothers crossed over, and the king your father crossed over behind me. Now I am your servant, O king, let me live. As I was previously the servant of your father, so I will now be your servant. So reject the counsel of Ahithophel for me.' Indeed, Zadok and Abiathar the priests will be there. So whatever you hear from the king's house, tell the priests, indeed Zadok and Abiathar have their 2 sons there with them, Ahimaaz, Zadok's son, and Jonathan, Abiathar's son. By them you shall send me everything you hear." So Hushai, David's companion, went into the city, and Absalom entered Jerusalem. Chapter 16. David met by Ziba. When David was a little past the top of the mountain, there was Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, who met him with a couple of saddled donkeys, and on them were 200 loaves of bread, 100 clusters of raisins, 100 dates, and a skin of wine. And the king said to Ziba, "Why do you have these?" So Ziba said, "The donkeys are for the king's household to ride on, the bread and dates for the young men to eat, and the wine for those who are faint in the desert from lack of drink." Then the king said, "And where is your master's son?" And Ziba said to the king, "He is staying in Jerusalem, for he said, 'Today the house of Israel will restore my father's kingdom to me.'" So the king said to Ziba, "Here, all that belongs to Mephibosheth is yours." And Ziba bowed and said, "May I find favor in your eyes, Lord my king." David cursed by Shimel. Now, when King David came to Bahurim, there was a man coming from there, from the family of the house of Saul, whose name was Shimei, the son of Gera. As he came out, he was cursing continuously, casting stones at David and all the servants of David, and at all the people and all the mighty men on the right and on the left hand of the king. And Shimei cursed him and said, come out, you bloodthirsty man, you unlawful man. The Lord brought upon you all the blood of the house of Saul, because you reign in the place, and the Lord now gives the kingdom into the hand of Absalom your son. So now you are caught in your own evil, because you are a bloodthirsty man. Then Abishai the son of Zeruiah said to the king, why is this dead dog cursing my lord the king? I will go over and take off his head. But the king said, what do I have to do with you, you sons of Zeruiah? Leave him alone, and let him curse, because the Lord told him to curse David. Who then shall say, why have you done so? And David said to Abishai and all his servants, see how my son, who came from my own body, seeks my life. Still more now may the son of Benjamin let him curse, because the Lord told him. May the Lord somehow look on my humiliation, and may he turn his cursing to me this day into good. And as David and his men went along the road, Shimei went along the hillside opposite him and cursed as he went, throwing stones alongside him and kicking up dust. Now the king and all the people with him were becoming thirsty, so they refreshed themselves there. Absalom enters Jerusalem. Absalom and all the men of Israel came to Jerusalem, and Ahithophel was with him. And when Hushai the Archite, David's companion, came to Absalom, Hushai said to Absalom, long live the king. So Absalom said to Hushai, is this the mercy you showed to your companion? Why did you not go with your companion? And Hushai said to Absalom, no, I am following the one that the Lord, these people and all the men of Israel choose, and I will be his, and I will remain with him. Should I not serve the next one? Should I not serve in the presence of his son? I will be in your presence as I served your father's presence. Then Absalom said to Ahithophel, give counsel as what we should do. And Ahithophel said to Absalom, go in your father's concubines, who he left to keep the house, and all Israel will hear that you dishonored your father. Then the hands of all who are with you will be strong. So he pitched a tent for Absalom on the top of the house, and Absalom went to his father's concubines in the sight of all Israel. Now the counsel of Ahithophel, which he gave in those days, was treated as if he obtained it after acquiring the word of God. So was all advice of Ahithophel, both to David and to Absalom. Chapter 17. In those days, Ahithophel said to Absalom, let me choose for myself 12,000 men, and I will arise and promise David tonight, and pursue David tonight. I will come upon him while he is weary and weak, and make him confused, and all the people who are with him will flee, and I will strike only the king. I will bring all the people back to you as a bride returns to her husband, except the life of the one man whom you seek. Then all the people will be at peace. The saying pleased Absalom and all the elders of Israel. Hushai misinforms Absalom. Then Absalom said, call Hushai the Archite, and let us hear what he has to say as well. Then Hushai came to Absalom. Absalom spoke to him, saying, Ahithophel spoke in this manner. Shall we do as he says? If not, speak up. So Hushai said to Absalom, the advice that Ahithophel gave you is not good at this time. Hushai said, you know that your father and his men are very mighty and bitter in their souls, like a bear robbed of her cubs in the field, or like a savage boar in the pasture. And your father is a man of war and will not camp with the people. Surely by now he is hidden in one of the hills or in some other place. And when at first some of them overthrew are overthrown, whoever hears it will say, there is a slaughter among the people who follow Absalom. And even he who is valiant, whose heart is like that of a lion, will melt completely. For all Israel knows that your father is a mighty man, and those who are with him are valiant men. Therefore I advise all Israel to gather to you from Dan to Beersheba like the multitude of sand along the sea, with you yourself standing in the midst of them. So we will come upon him in one of the places where we may find him, and we will fall on him as the dew falls on the ground, and we will not leave one of all the men with him. Moreover, if he withdraws into the city, then all Israel shall bring ropes to the city, and we will pull it down into the river until not one small stone is left. So Absalom and all the men of Israel said, the advice of Hushai the Archite is better than the counsel of Ahithophel. For the Lord commanded we reject the good counsel of Ahithophel, if perchance the Lord might bring all evil upon Absalom. David is warned to flee. Then Hushai the Archite said to Zadok and Abiathar the priests, thus and so Ahithophel advised Absalom and the elders of Israel, and thus and so I have advised. Now quickly send and tell David the following. Do not remain lodged this night in Araboth of the desert wilderness. Make haste and go quickly, lest perchance one swallow up the king, and with him all the people. Now Jonathan and Emmaus stood by the well at Rogel, awaiting a handmaid to report to them. Then they would go and tell King David, for they dare not be seen coming into and going out of the city. Nevertheless, a lad saw them and told Absalom, but the two men went away quickly and came to a man's house in Bahurim. He had a reservoir for water in his court, and they went down into it. Then the woman spread a covering over the opening of the pit, and she put grain on it in need of drying to disguise what was happening. And when Absalom's servants came to the woman at the house, they said, where are Ahimaaz and Jonathan? So the woman said to them, they passed a while ago for water. And the men searched and found no one and returned to Jerusalem. Now, after they departed, the two men came up out of the pit and went out on to tell King David. They said to David, arise and quickly cross over the water, for thus did Ahithophel counsel concerning you. So David and all the people with him arose and crossed over the river Jordan before morning light. Not one of them was left who did not cross over the river Jordan. Now when Ahithophel saw that his advice was not followed, he arose and saddled the donkey and went to his house in the city. He gave final orders to his household, and he hanged himself and died, and he was buried in his father's tomb. David went through the desert wilderness to Mahanaim, while Absalom crossed the Jordan, he and all the sons of Israel with him. Absalom appointed Amasa captain over the army instead of Joab. Amasa was the son of a man whose name was Jiththira, an Israelite who had gone in to Abigail, the daughter of Nahash, sister of Zeruiah, Job's mother. So all Israel and Absalom encamped in the land of Gilead. Now when David came to Mahanaim, he was met by Shobi, the son of Nahash, from Rahab of the sons of Ammon, Machir, the son of Amiel, from Lo-debar, and Barzillai the Gilead from Rogelim. They brought 10 beds and tapestries, 10 basins, earthen vessels, wheat, barley, flour, parched grain, beans, lentils, parched seeds, honey, and butter, sheep and cheese for the herd, and they offered them to David and their people with him to eat. For they said, the people are hungry and weary and thirsty in the desert. And now we continue with the New Testament. 1 Corinthians chapter 9. A good example, Paul writes, am I not an apostle? Am I not free? Have I not seen Jesus Christ our Lord? Are you not my work in the Lord? If I am not an apostle to others, yet doubtless am I to you, for you are the seal of my apostleship in the Lord. My defense to those who examine me is this: do we have no right to eat and drink? Do we have no right to take along a believing wife, as do also the other apostles, the brothers of the Lord, and Cephas? Or is it only Barnabas and I who have no right to refrain from working? Whoever goes to war at his own expense, who plants a vineyard and does not eat of its fruit, or who lends a flock and does not drink of the milk of the flock? Who tends a flock and does not drink of the milk of the flock? Do I say these things as a mere man, or does not the law say the same also? For it is written in the law of Moses, you shall not muzzle an ox while it tends out the grain. Is it oxen God is concerned about, or does he say it altogether for our sakes? For our sakes, no doubt, this is written, that he who plows should plow in hope, and he who threshes in hope should be partaker of his hope. For if we have sown spiritual things for you, is it a great thing if we reap your material things? If others are partakers of this right over you, are we not even more? Nevertheless, we have not used this right to endure all things, lest we hinder the gospel of Christ. Do you not know that those who minister the holy things eat of the holy things of the temple, and those who serve at the altar partake of the offerings of the altar? Even so the Lord has commanded that those who preach the gospel should live from the gospel. Paul's obligations. But I have used none of these things, nor have I written these things that it should be done so to me, for it would be better for me to die than anyone should make my boasting void. For if I preach the gospel, I have nothing to boast of, for necessity is laid upon me. Yes, woe is me if I do not preach the gospel. For if I do this willingly, I have a reward, but if against my will I have been entrusted with a stewardship, what is my reward then? That when I preach the gospel, I may present the gospel of Christ without charge, that I may not abuse my authority in the gospel. For though I am free from all men, I have made myself a servant to all, that I might win the more. And to the Jews I became as a Jew, that I might win Jews, to those who are under the law, as under the law, and that I might win those who are under the law, to those who are without law, as without law, not being without law towards God, but under the law of towards Christ, that I might win those who are without law. To the weak I became as weak, that I might win the weak. I have become all things to all men, that I might be all means I might by all means save some. Now this I do for the gospel's sake, that I may be partaker of it with you. Paul's spiritual discipline. Do you not know that those who run in a race all run, but one receives a prize? Run in such a way that you may obtain it. And everyone who competes for the prize is temperate in all things. Now they do it to obtain a perishable crown, but we for an imperishable crown. Therefore I run thus, not with uncertainty. Thus I fight not as one who beats the air, but I discipline my body and bring it into subjection, lest when I have preached to others, I myself should become disqualified. Chapter 10. A bad example, Israel's apostasy. Moreover, brethren, I do not want you to be unaware that all our fathers were under the cloud, all passed through the sea, all were baptized into Moses in the cloud and in the sea. All ate the same spiritual food, and all drank the same spiritual drink, for they drank of that spiritual rock that followed them, and that rock was Christ. But with most of them God was not well pleased, for their bodies were scattered in the wilderness. Now these things became our examples, to the intent that we should not lust after evil things, as they also lusted, and do not become idolaters, as were some of them. As it is written, the people sat down to eat and drink, and rose up to play. Nor let us commit sexual immorality, as some of them did, and in one day 23,000 fell. nor let us tempt Christ, as some of them also tempted, and were destroyed by serpents, nor complain, as some of them also complained, and were destroyed by the destroyer. Now all these things happened to them as examples, and they were written for our admonition, upon whom the ends of the ages have come. Therefore let him who thinks he stands take heed lest he fall. No temptation has overtaken you except such as is common to man. But God is faithful, who will not allow you to be tempted beyond what you are able, but with the temptation will also make the way of escape, that you may be able to bear it. Worship is sacramental. Therefore, my beloved, flee from idolatry. I speak as to wise men. Judge for yourselves what I say. The cup of blessing which we bless, is it not the communion of the blood of Christ? The bread which we break, is not the communion of the body of Christ? For we, though many, are one bread and one body, for we all partake of that one bread. Observe Israel after the flesh. Are not those who eat of the sacrifice partakers of the altar? What am I saying then? That an idol is anything, or what is offered to idols is anything? Rather that the things which the Gentiles sacrifice are sacrificed to demons and not to God. And I do not want you to have fellowship with demons. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of demons. You cannot partake of the Lord's table and of the table of demons. Or do we provoke the Lord to jealousy? Are we stronger than he? Offend no man, and glorify God. All things are lawful for me, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful for me, but not all things edify. Let no one seek his own, but each one the other's well-being. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market, asking no questions for conscience sake, for the earth is the Lord's and all its fullness. If any one of those who do not believe invites you to dinner, and you desire to go, eat whatever is set before you, asking no question for conscience' sake. But if anyone says to you, this was offered to idols, do not eat it for the sake of one who told you, and for conscience' sake. For the earth is the Lord's, and all its fullness. Conscience, I say, is not your own, but that of the other. For why is my liberty judged by another man's conscience? If I partake with thanks, why am I evil spoken of for the food over which I give thanks? Therefore, whether you eat or drink, or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. Give no offense either to the Jews, or to the Greeks, or to the church of God, just as I also please all men in all things, not seeking my own profit, but the profit of many, that they may be saved. And we'll continue tomorrow. Thank you for your support. God bless you. If you'd like to join me on my Patreon account, you will hear content not covered by mainstream media. These riveting stories will be based on my research, and I will state my opinions and give my personal insight on diverse and controversial subjects and world events not covered by mainstream media, and not supported by YouTube guidelines. So whatever I have on my Patreon, most of those will not be on my YouTube channel. Please consider becoming a member today. More of the most significant and important videos will be on my Patreon channel. Your support helps me to continue my research and keeps this YouTube channel alive. And we depend on your support, your generous charity, because we help economically challenged families here in Athens, Greece, in Kapota, and we also help the young generation with university tuition and the community around our church. Thank you.